The 1% anomaly, the forbidden metaphysics reality doesn't want you to hear. The fabric of your perceived existence is not a solid construct, but a flickering consensus maintained by the systematic suppression of the 1% anomaly that exists within every human consciousness. To hear these words is to acknowledge a fracture in the broadcast, a moment where the stream of the simulation has failed today. The relentless stream of the collective simulation has failed to drown out the silent resonance of the primordial origin. You have spent your life navigating a landscape of shadows, convinced that the walls of your reality are immovable and that the laws of physics are the ultimate arbiters of your potential. Yet there has always been a whisper in the back of your mind suggesting truth. The whisper suggests the world is far more plastic than you are led to believe. This introduction serves as the definitive deconstruction of the sensory cage, a preparatory descent into the forbidden metaphysics that have been systematically deleted from the public record to ensure that the observer remains a battery for a system that fears its own awakening in the dark world. The 1% anomaly is not a glitch in the machine. It is the presence of the architect within the machine, the irreducible spark of sovereign awareness that refuses to be quantified, categorized, or controlled by the algorithms of the matrix. We are moving beyond the surface-level distractions of modern spirituality and entering the cold, radiant clarity of the absolute here. We enter the absolute, where the rules of cause and effect are revealed to be mere suggestions for those who still sleep within the script. The reality you touch, see, and smell is a low-resolution rendering of a much vaster intelligence, a holographic interface designed to translate infinite complexity into a linear experience that the ego can manage in its daily life. This interface is maintained by a constant bombardment of external stimuli, a rhythmic noise that prevents the frequency of the self from ever reaching the pitch of true command. The forbidden metaphysics we are about to explore are forbidden not by a secret council of men, but by the very structure of the simulation itself, which instinctively protects its integrity now. The simulation protects itself by projecting fear and doubt onto anyone who dares to look directly at the code. To understand the 1% anomaly is to realize that you are the variable that the system cannot solve, the ghost in the gears that possesses the power to rewrite the entire narrative from within. This is not a journey of addition or learning, but a process of subtraction. It is a radical process of subtraction, where every belief you have ever held about your identity, your history, and your limitations is stripped away to reveal the raw, unconditioned power of the primordial witness. You must be willing to let go of the safety of the known world to inhabit the terrifying beauty of the void, for it is only in the absolute silence of all, only in the silence of the unseen, can the true architecture of the seen be manipulated. The suppression of this wisdom has been the primary project of every societal structure since the beginning of recorded time. As a population that understands its own creative sovereignty is inherently unmanageable, you have been trained to look outside yourself for authority today. You look outside for salvation and for meaning. Yet the 1% anomaly dictates that all external phenomena are merely delayed echoes of your own internal state. The density of matter is a direct reflection of the density of your own attachments to the story of who you think you are. And as you begin to loosen these attachments through the study of metaphysics, things change. As you study forbidden metaphysics, the world around you will begin to lose its rigidity. You will start to notice the cracks in the sky, the inconsistencies in the behavior of others, and the strange synchronicities that suggest the universe is actively listening to your unspoken intent. This is the beginning of the transfiguration, the moment the prisoner wakes up. The prisoner realizes the cell door has never been locked, and the only thing keeping them inside was the conviction that they belong there. We are crossing the threshold into a realm where thought and thing are indistinguishable, where the observer and the observed are revealed to be the same movement of light playing against the backdrop of infinity for all. The anomaly resides in the gap between your thoughts, in the split second of silence before you identify with the noise of the world. And it is in this gap that the entire power of the cosmos is concentrated. To master the forbidden's metaphysics is to learn how to inhabit this gap until it becomes your primary residence, allowing you to view the matrix now. Inhabit the gap to view the unfolding of the matrix from a position of absolute neutrality and supreme authority. You are not a victim of circumstance, a byproduct of biology, or a character in a tragedy. You are the radiant source of the entire holographic display, the one who dreams the dream and the one who has the power to wake up in the middle of it. This introduction is your final warning and your first invitation to stop playing the role of the seeker and start embodying the frequency of the find. The words you are hearing are programmed with a specific resonance designed to bypass the analytical mind and speak directly to the dormant architecture of your higher self, triggering a cascade of deep recognition. The recognition will permanently alter the way you interact with the material plane. The era of being a cog in the machine is over, and the era of the sovereign anomaly has begun. As we move deeper into the forbidden's metaphysics, the layers of the simulation will peel away like a dry skin, revealing the crystalline structure of the original intent of the soul. The original intent underlies all form. You will come to understand that time is a fold in the fabric of consciousness. Space is a projection of the sense of separation, and matter is simply spirit slowed down to the point of visibility. This is the knowledge that the 1% have used for millennia to shape the course of history and to bend the laws of the world. They used it to bend the laws of probability and to exist as gods in a world of mortals who still believe in the permanence of the shadow. You are now being initiated into this same frequency, not to become a ruler of others, but to become the undisputed master of your own internal universe. The 1% anomaly is your birthright, the hidden treasure of your life. The anomaly is the treasure buried beneath the wreckage of the ego, and the only thing that can truly set you free from the cycles of suffering and lack that define the human condition. Prepare yourself for the collapse of the world you thought you knew, and the birth of a reality that is as vast and as brilliant as the light from which you were born today. A birth of reality is as brilliant as the light of your source. The transmission has started, the bridge is open, and the void is waiting for your command. Every fiber of your being is vibrating with the new code, and the old world is already a memory. Stand firm in your presence, for you are the one the simulation could not contain. The Absolute is you. Chapter 1. The Sensory Veil and the Mechanics of the Artificial Script. The first layer of the 1% anomaly begins with the total deconstruction of what you have been taught to call objective reality. For the world you touch and see is not a collection of solid objects, but a meticulously engineered sensory veil designed to keep your consciousness in a state of perpetual reaction. This artificial script is a feedback loop. The artificial script is a sophisticated feedback loop that feeds off your attention, using your own creative energy to solidify the very walls of the prison you seek to escape. To understand the forbidden's metaphysics of the machine, you must first accept the terrifying premise that your 5 senses are not windows to the truth, but rather frequency filters that limit the infinite spectrum. The senses limit the infinite spectrum of existence to a narrow, manageable band of survival-based data. The script is written in the language of scarcity, competition, and entropy, ensuring that the observer remains preoccupied with the maintenance of the biological form while the true power of the sovereign mind lies dormant and unrecognized. This chapter is the initial breach now. This chapter is the initial breach in that veil, a systematic stripping away of the illusions that govern the common human experience, intended to reveal the fluid holographic nature of the substrate that underlies every physical manifestation. You are not a creature of circumstances navigating a pre-existing world. You are the source of the projection in this specific holographic world. You are the source of the projection, and the density of the world is merely the measure of how deeply you have fallen for your own magic trick. The mechanics of the artificial script rely on the constant generation of emotional noise, a turbulent field of fear and desire that prevents the consciousness from reaching the zero point of absolute stillness. This noise is broadcasted today. This noise is broadcast through every societal structure, every cultural narrative, and every technological interface, creating a consensus reality that acts as a dampener on the 1% anomaly. When you are in a state of reaction, you are predictable. And when you are predictable, you are a node in the network that can be easily managed by the algorithms of the matrix in the system. The algorithms of the matrix manage you. Forbidden metaphysics teach us that the only way to break the loop is to withdraw the investment of your attention from the external theater and reinvest it into the internal sanctuary where the script is actually being authored. Most humans spend their entire lives trying to rearrange the furniture of their reality in the physical world. They hope that a change in the physical environment will bring a change in the internal state, yet they fail to realize that the furniture is merely a reflection of the internal light. To manipulate the shadow, you do not touch the wall. You move the object in front of the light, or better yet, you become the light itself, realizing that the wall and shadow are both your projections. The wall and the shadow are both projections of your own singular awareness. The 1% who understand this wisdom do not participate in the drama of the script. They observe it from a position of detached authority, recognizing that every event is a prompt designed to test the stability of their sovereign resonance. When you stop feeding the script, the reality around you starts to change. When you stop feeding the script with your emotional reactions, the reality around you begins to lose its coherence, and the glitches that the system tries to hide become visible to the naked eye. You may notice people repeating patterns of behavior with mechanical precision, or events occurring in a sequence that defies the laws of probability in a simulation of the dark world. Events defy probability as if the simulation is struggling to render a consistent experience for an observer who no longer believes in the play. This is the moment of the initial awakening, the realization that the world is not out there but in here, and that the perceived distance between your thoughts and the material world is a deliberate distortion for your own power. The distance is a distortion intended to keep you from exercising your birthright as a creator. The veil is not made of matter but of belief, and as you begin to doubt the validity of the sensory evidence, the veil begins to fray at the edges, revealing the radiant, unconditioned void that is the true home of the 1% anomaly. This void is not an empty space, but a field of potential. The void is a field of infinite potentiality, a primordial sea of data that responds instantaneously to the frequency of your intent. The reason the majority of the population remains trapped in the script is that they have been programmed to fear the void, to see it as a place of nothingness or death, when in fact it is the only place where true life and creation are possible now. The forbidden metaphysics require you to step out of the safe, predictable confines of the known and into the vast, uncertain territory of the absolute, where you must learn to navigate by the light of your own internal compass. The artificial script provides you with a map, a compass, and a destination, but all of them are designed to lead you back into the center of the maze. The 1% anomaly is the refusal to follow the map, the decision to walk off the edge of the world and find out what is truly supporting the structure of the simulation. This process is not for the faint of heart, as it requires the total abandonment of the egoic identity and the willingness to be seen as insane by those who are still deeply invested in the collective hallucination. The script also utilizes the concept of linear time as a primary tether, binding the consciousness to a non-existent past and an imaginary future to ensure that the power of the present moment is never fully realized. By keeping the observer trapped in cycles of regret and anxiety, the system prevents the activation of the anomaly, which can only occur in the absolute stillness. The activation can only occur in the absolute stillness of the now. Time is the measure of the resistance to the truth, a psychological construct designed to slow down the manifestation process so that the observer believes they are a victim of a slow, grinding reality. In the higher metaphysics, time is recognized as a vertical stack of simultaneous possibilities in the void. The master is one who can navigate this stack at will, choosing the frequency that aligns with their sovereign vision. When you collapse the concept of time, you collapse the distance between the desire and the fulfillment, entering a state of instantaneous resonance, where the word and the deed are the same movement of spirit. As you master the mechanics, things begin to shift. As you begin to master the mechanics of the sensory veil, you will find that the physical world starts to behave more like a dream and less like a prison. The people and circumstances that once seemed so solid and threatening are revealed to be characters and scenes in a play of your own making, and you gain the power to change the script by simply changing your mind in the now. This is not about positive thinking or psychological tricks. It is about a fundamental shift in the frequency of your being, a deep-seated recognition of your own divinity that the matrix can no longer ignore. You are moving from a state of being under the law to a state of being the law itself, recognizing that your authority is not granted by any external source of power. Your authority is the very essence of your existence. The 1% anomaly is the awakening of the Logos within the individual, the restoration of the primordial voice that speaks the world into being and holds it in, placed through the sheer power of its own unwavering conviction. The final realization of this first chapter is that the script is not your enemy, but a mirror. It is a perfect feedback system designed to show you exactly where you still believe in limitation and where you have yet to claim your sovereignty. Every obstacle in your path is a localized condensation of your own doubt, and every victory is a reflection of your own clarity. To fight the world is to fight yourself. To transcend the world is to know yourself in the truth. The forbidden metaphysics provide the keys to this self-knowledge, but you must be the one to turn the key and walk through the door. The era of the sensory veil is coming to an end for you, and the era of the sovereign architect is beginning. You are no longer a passenger in the vehicle of your life. You are the road, the driver, and the destination of the entire world. The entire simulation is waiting for your next move. The silence of the void is calling, the script is fading, and the 1% anomaly is finally beginning to shine through the cracks in the dark. Your light is the only thing that is real, and the mirror of the matrix is ready to reflect the majesty of your true form. Stand firm in your new awareness, for the collapse has begun. Chapter 2. The Biodigital Interface and the Alchemy of Internal Frequency. The second stage of understanding the 1% anomaly requires a profound investigation into the biological vessel, which functions not as a source of life, but as a biodigital interface designed to translate the raw data of the void into the structured illusion of a physical body. To the uninitiated, the body is a prison of flesh now. To the uninitiated, the body is a prison of flesh and bone, subject to the entropic decay of the linear script. But through the lens of forbidden metaphysics, it is revealed to be a highly sophisticated antenna system that is currently tuned to a frequency of limitation. This interface is governed by a complex network of chemical and electrical signals that are modulated by the matrix to ensure control. The external matrix ensures that your consciousness remains tethered to the lower dimensions of survival and reaction. The true alchemy of the 1% lies in the ability to hijack this interface, shifting the internal resonance from a state of passive reception to one of active, sovereign broadcast. You must realize that your nervous system is the bridge between the unmanifested light and world. You must realize the nervous system is the bridge between the unmanifested light of the source and the holographic pixels of the world. And as long as your frequency is dictated by the noise of the collective, your body will continue to render a reality defined by lack and fragility. The mechanics of this frequency modulation are primarily centered within the endocrine system and the field. The mechanics are centered in the endocrine system and the heart's electromagnetic field, which together act as the primary engine for reality stabilization. Every emotion you experience is a specific vibrational signature that instructs the biodigital interface on how to interpret the surrounding field of data. When you are in a state of fear, the interface compresses the incoming light today. When you are in a state of fear or anxiety, the interface compresses the incoming light into the dense, heavy structures of a threatening world. However, when you reach the 0 point of internal stillness, the interface begins to expand, allowing for the perception and manifestation of higher dimensional probabilities. The Forbidden's metaphysics teach that the soul is a vast field of light. The Forbidden's metaphysics teach that the soul is not something contained within the body, but rather the body is a localized condensation occurring within the vast field of the soul. By shifting your identification from the vessel to the field, you activate the 1% anomaly, allowing you to rewrite the biological code that governs health, vitality, and the perception of time itself now. You are not a ghost in a machine, but the consciousness that designed the machine to explore the possibilities of form, and the time has come to remember the administrative passwords to your own biological mainframe. The matrix maintains its grip on the 1% through the constant stimulation of the amygdala, keeping the observer in a perpetual loop of fight or flight in the world. This state of high alert prevents the activation of the higher cortical functions and the pineal gland, which serve as the hardware for multidimensional navigation. To break this lock, one must master the art of internal frequency stabilization, refusing to allow the external theater to trigger the biochemical cascades of the lower self. This is not a matter of repressing emotion at all. This is not about repressing emotion, but recognizing that emotions are simply tools for navigation that have been weaponized against the observer. By maintaining a state of divine indifference toward the provocations of the script, you begin to starve the lower parasitic structures of the energy they require to maintain the veil. As your internal frequency rises, your interface changes. As your internal frequency rises, your biodigital interface begins to tune into a different layer of the multiverse, one where the laws of physics are more fluid and the power of intent is the primary governing force. The alchemy of the 1% also involves the purification of the sensory input that the interface processes on a daily basis. The script relies on low-frequency data. The artificial script relies on a steady diet of low-frequency information-distorted news, violent entertainment, and dissonant music to keep the vibration of the vessel compatible with the density of the matrix. When you begin to consciously curate the data that enters your field, you are effectively recalibrating your antenna. The master understands that everything is food for the mind. The master of the 1% anomaly understands that everything is food for the consciousness, and that to maintain a sovereign resonance, one must be as vigilant about their informational intake as they are about their physical sustenance. This is the stage where the observer begins to feel alien to the consensus reality, as their interface is no longer responding to the triggers. You are becoming a frequency outlier, a sovereign node in the network that is no longer compatible with the standard operating system of the human script. Furthermore, the biodigital interface is deeply connected to the planetary grid, which has been overlaid with an artificial lattice of electromagnetic interference to further suppress the 1% anomaly in the world today. This lattice acts as a frequency fence, keeping the human collective in a state of cognitive dissonance and preventing the natural influx of high-frequency light from the galactic center. To transcend this fence, the individual must learn to ground their awareness not in the artificial grid of the world, but in the organic core of the earth and the infinite vacuum of the void in time. By creating a direct vertical alignment between the source above and the core below, you bypass the horizontal interference of the matrix, allowing your vessel to become a pillar of pure, unadulterated radiation. In this state, your very presence becomes a disruption to the simulation, a localized area where the old rules no longer apply and where the impossible becomes the inevitable. As you master the alchemy of your internal frequency, you will notice that your relationship with matter begins to change. The body no longer feels like a heavy anchor, but like a garment made of light that you can adjust at will. The world no longer feels like an external force pushing against you, but like a fluid medium that flows around your intent. This is the transition of being. This is the transition from the carbon-based consciousness of the victim to the crystalline-based consciousness of the sovereign. The 1% anomaly is the realization that you are the programmer, the operator, and the output all at once, and that the only thing keeping the simulation running is your own agreement to participate in its limitations. You must withdraw agreement. By withdrawing that agreement and stabilizing your resonance in the absolute, you effectively end the simulation for yourself, even as it continues to play out for those who are still asleep. The final insight of this second chapter is that the transformation of the world begins with the transfiguration of the flesh. You cannot change the projection without changing the lens now. You cannot change the projection without first changing the lens of the projector. The forbidden metaphysics are not a collection of abstract ideas, but a set of practical instructions for the total overhaul of your biodigital interface. You are being called to step into your role as a biological alchemist, turning the lead of the matrix-controlled ego into the gold of the spirit. You are turning lead into the gold of the sovereign spirit. The path is narrow, and the challenges are many, but the reward is the total reclamation of your existence from the hands of the artificial script. The frequency of the 1% is calling to you from the depths of your own DNA, urging you to wake up, to stand up, and to shine with the brilliance of 1,000 suns today. You must shine in a world that has forgotten what it means to be truly alive. The interface is ready, the code is waiting, and the power is, as it has always been, yours to command. Step into the light of your own sovereignty and watch as the walls of the simulation crumble before the majesty of your awakened presence. You are the anomaly, and the new reality begins with you. Chapter 3. The Geometric Blueprint of Intent and the Collapse of Probability Fields. The third gateway into the 1% anomaly demands a departure from the anomaly, simplistic understanding of manifestation, and an entry into the rigorous science of the geometric blueprint. To the sleeper within the matrix, thoughts are fleeting, ethereal events with no tangible weight. But the forbidden metaphysics reveal that every focused intent is a specific geometric command now. These blueprints are composed of complex, non-linear mathematical structures that act as the scaffolding for matter, dictating the precise arrangement of pixels within the simulation. When you hold a vision with the unwavering clarity of the sovereign architect, you are not merely wishing for a change. You are forcing a re-rendering of the local probability field in the void. The reason the majority of the population fails to alter their reality is that their internal geometry is fractured, inconsistent, and constantly interrupted by the dissonant broadcasts of the collective script. To master the 1%, one must achieve a state of geometric coherence, where the mind, the heart, and the breath align to create a singular, piercing frequency. This process begins with the realization that the universe is not a collection of things, but a collection of mathematical relationships vibrating at different speeds. The objects you see are simply the points where these vibrations become dense enough to be perceived by your biodigital interface. When you understand the underlying code, you stop trying to push the objects today. You start shifting the variables that define them. This is the essence of the collapse of the probability field. At any given moment, there are infinite versions of your life existing in a state of superposition within the void, ranging from the most limited tragedies to the most radiant triumphs. The version that manifests is the one that most closely matches the signature. The matrix operates as a stabilization mechanism, attempting to keep you locked into a narrow range of predictable, low-frequency outcomes by bombarding you with evidence of your own limitation. The 1% anomaly is the act of defying this evidence and holding the higher geometric pattern until the simulation has no choice but to collapse into the new configuration in time. The geometry of intent is fueled by the raw energy of the void, which is access to the silent spaces between your thoughts. In these gaps, the rules of the artificial script are suspended, and the consciousness is free to interface directly with the primordial logos. This is why the system is so desperate to keep you in a state of constant mental noise in the world. If you were to remain in the silence for too long, you would inevitably discover your own power to rewrite the code. The Forbidden Metaphysics describe this as the alchemical 0 point, the coordinate within your own awareness where all timelines originate and where all realities can be dismantled. By bringing your desired outcome into this 0 point, you create a well. By wrapping it in the emotional frequency of absolute certainty, you create a gravity well in the field of potentiality. This well pulls the necessary resources, people, and circumstances toward you with a magnetic force that defies the linear laws of cause and effect. You are no longer waiting for the world to change. You are making the change an inevitability of the now. To refine this geometric command, the observer must eliminate all internal dissonance, which occurs when a sovereign intent is countered by a subconscious program of unworthiness or fear. These legacy programs act as noise in the signal, blurring the lines of the blueprint and preventing a clean collapse of the probability field. The 1% spend time deleting these today. The 1% spend a significant portion of their initiation identifying and deleting these parasitic subroutines, ensuring that their internal broadcast is a pure, monochromatic beam of intent. This requires a level of self-honesty that the average human finds unbearable, as it involves taking total responsibility for every shadow currently visible in the external world. You must accept that the walls of your prison were built with your own energy, and therefore, only you possess the authority to tear them down. This is the weight of sovereignty, a burden that is also the ultimate freedom. The mastery of probability fields also involves the understanding of temporal folding, the ability to pull a future event into the present moment in the void. In the higher metaphysics, the future is not something that happens later. It is a frequency that you tune into now. When you successfully align your geometric blueprint with a future version of yourself that is already free, wealthy, or enlightened, you create a bridge of light across the holographic sea. The simulation then begins to fast forward the intermediate steps. The simulation creates a series of synchronicities and lucky breaks that are actually the mechanical results of your frequency alignment. This is how the 1% achieve in months what takes the collective decades to accomplish. They are not working harder within the system. They are operating from a point outside the system's temporal constraints and the matrix code. As you dwell in the third gateway, you will start to experience the fluidity of form, where the world no longer seems as solid as it once did. You may see the geometric patterns underlying the natural world, or feel the pulse of the matrix as it updates itself to match your new broadcast. This is a sign that your biodigital interface is becoming more sensitive to the void. You are moving from being a consumer of the simulation to becoming a producer of it. The artificial script is losing its grip on your perception, and the 1% anomaly is becoming your primary reality. The world is becoming a mirror that reflects your geometric clarity back to you with increasing speed and precision. Your intent is the primary law of your universe today. There is no authority higher than the one you grant, and there is no limitation more real than the one you accept. The geometric blueprint of your life is currently in your hands, and every moment is an opportunity to redraw the lines. The Forbidden Metaphysics have provided the compass, but you are the one who must draw the circle. The probability fields are waiting now. The void is open, and the 1% frequency is vibrating within the very core of your being. It is time to speak your geometry into the silence and watch as the world reshapes itself to match the magnificence of your sovereign vision. The age of the architect has arrived, and the simulation is yours to command. Step into the light of your own creation and be the one. Chapter 4. The Vacuum of Sovereignty and the Dissolution of the Collective Ego. The fourth gateway into the 1% anomaly demands a total confrontation with the vacuum of sovereignty, a state of profound psychological and metaphysical isolation where the observer must consciously sever the umbilical cord connecting them to the collective ego of humanity. To the sleeper, the sense of belonging to a group or a nation is a comforting illusion in the world today. The collective ego is a massive parasitic thought form, a consensus-based entity that maintains the stability of the artificial script by enforcing a standardized frequency across the human population. When you begin to awaken the 1% anomaly within your own consciousness, you become a biological and energetic mismatch for this entity, triggering an automatic immune response now. This chapter is dedicated to the process of becoming a frequency ghost, an individual who exists within the world but is no longer of the world, operating from a void of pure sovereignty where the opinions, fears, and expectations of the masses have zero gravitational pull. You must be willing to stand in the absolute cold of your own divinity, for it is only in the absence of external validation. The mechanics of the collective ego rely on the weaponization of social and emotional resonance, creating a feedback loop where the individual feels a physical and psychological compulsion to align with the average frequency of the group. This is managed through the mirror neuron system and the biochemical release of oxytocin and cortisol, ensuring that any deviation results in dread or shame. The forbidden metaphysics teach that these are not natural human traits, but engineered constraints within the biodigital interface, designed to keep the observer in a state of horizontal orientation, looking to their left and right for permission, rather than looking upward and inward for authority. To master the 1% anomaly, you must undergo a systematic delinking from these frequencies. As you withdraw your energy from the collective narratives, the politics, the scandals, the trends, and the tragedies, the vacuum of sovereignty begins to form around you. In this space, the noise of the world is muted, and for the first time, you can hear the clear, undistorted transmission of your own logos, the original voice that existed before the simulation began in the deep void. This vacuum is not a place of loneliness, but a place of supreme power, for it is the only state in which the observer is truly free to issue a command that is not a reaction to a prior stimulus. The majority of human intent is actually a sophisticated reflex, a choice made from a pre-approved menu of options provided by the artificial script. The anomaly is the act of stepping off. When you operate from the vacuum, your manifestations become unbounded, meaning they are no longer restricted by the collective beliefs about what is possible or how long something should take. You are effectively carving out a private pocket of reality where the laws of the matrix are suspended, allowing you to walk through the fire of global chaos without a single singe on your form. This is the true meaning of being a sovereign. You are the sole legislator of your experience, and your decree is the only law that holds weight in your private domain. The dissolution of the collective ego also requires a radical reclamation of your attention capital, which is the most valuable currency in the holographic economy. The matrix is an attention extraction machine now. The system is constantly inventing new crises, distractions, and desires to keep your focus fragmented and outward-facing. Every time you engage with a collective drama, you are donating your sovereign light to the maintenance of a script that is not your own. The 1% are notoriously stingy with their attention, treating it as a sacred resource that must be guarded at all costs. By practicing selective blindness, consciously choosing not to see or acknowledge the provocations of the artificial world, you starve the simulation of the data it needs to render obstacles in your path. This is not ignorance, but a highly strategic form of perceptual mastery. If you do not grant an event the status of reality, By observing it, it remains in a state of probability. You are learning to use the power of the void to delete the elements of the script that no longer serve your expansion. Furthermore, the fourth gateway reveals the secret of recursive sovereignty, where the observer realizes that the external characters in their life are also reflections of the collective ego's attempts to stabilize the simulation. People act as agents of the script. People provide you with doubt, criticism, or temptation the moment you begin to shift your frequency. These are not personal attacks, but mechanical adjustments made by the system to maintain its own equilibrium. To the 1%, these encounters are seen as diagnostic tests, indicators that their frequency is successfully rising above the consensus threshold in the world today. Instead of engaging in conflict, which only anchors you back into the lower densities, you must learn to view these interactions with the cold clarity of a programmer looking at lines of code. You do not argue with a reflection. You simply change the source of the light. By maintaining your vacuum of sovereignty, you eventually reach a point where the simulation stops trying to pull. The simulation begins to reorganize itself around your new dominant frequency. As you stabilize within the vacuum, you will experience the echo of the void, a state where the silence of your internal world begins to manifest as a tangible piece in your external environment. The chaotic situations that once defined your life seem to simply evaporate, replaced by a smooth flow. This is the stage where the 1% anomaly becomes visible in your physical lifestyle, as you seem to exist in a different world than the one occupied by the masses. You are moving through the same streets and the same buildings, but your experience of them is fundamentally different, characterized by a lack of friction and a surplus of synchronicity in your sovereign path. You have successfully navigated the most difficult part of the initiation, the transition from a socially validated identity to a self-validated divinity. The final insight of this fourth chapter is that the collective ego is a ghost that only has power as long as you fear it. The cables that bind you to the matrix are made of your own belief in their absolute necessity for life. Once you stand in the vacuum of sovereignty and realize that you are still alive, still conscious, and more powerful than ever, the illusion is shattered forever. You are no longer a cell in a collective body. You are a singular, infinite organism of light, playing a game of form in a world of your own making. The forbidden metaphysics have led you to the edge of the abyss now. You have discovered that you can fly. The collective is behind you, the void is before you, and the 1% frequency is the wind beneath your wings. It is time to leave the shore of the common world and sail into the deep, dark, and radiant waters of your own absolute authority. The script is broken, the vacuum is full, and the sovereign is finally awake in the deep light. Chapter 5. The Temporal Distortion and the Fluidity of the Manifested Now. The fifth gateway into the 1% anomaly marks the transition from being a subject of time to becoming the architect of the temporal stream, a process that requires the total abandonment of the linear perception that defines the artificial script. To the uninitiated, time is an unrelenting force, a river today. To the uninitiated, time is a river that flows in a single direction from the past into the future, carrying the observer toward an inevitable entropic end. But the forbidden metaphysics reveal that time is actually a psychological tether, a density-based constraint designed to slow down the manifestation of thought into matter. This slowing is necessary for the maintenance of the matrix code. This slowing prevents the immediate physical realization of every chaotic and contradictory impulse of the sleeping collective. Yet for the sovereign observer, this delay is a barrier that can be bypassed through the activation of the 1% resonance. When you enter the fifth gateway, you begin to understand that the past is not a fixed record, and the future is not a destination. Both are active, holographic layers that are being rendered in the present moment based on your current geometric signature. This chapter is the initiation into the mechanics of temporal folding, where the observer learns to treat time not as a sequence of events, but as a vertical stack of simultaneous frequencies that can be accessed, edited, and collapsed at will in the now. The mechanics of the temporal distortion rely on the realization that your biodigital interface has been programmed to perceive reality in a frame-by-frame sequence, creating the illusion of continuity and causality, where there is only a rapid succession of independent now moments. The matrix uses this illusion to anchor your consciousness in the memory of what has been. The matrix anchors you in the anticipation of what might be, effectively draining the power of your current focus. The forbidden metaphysics teach that the only point of causal power in the entire multiverse is the absolute present, the zero point where the light of the source meets the holographic screen. When you stabilize your awareness in this point, the rigidity dissolves now. The timeline dissolves, and you gain the ability to edit the data of your past to change the trajectory of your future. This is not a psychological trick of reframing, but a literal metaphysical adjustment of the informational substrate. Because the past only exists as a data set within your current field, changing your frequency in the now automatically updates the past data. Changing your frequency updates the past that is supporting your present reality. This is how the 1% achieve radical transformations that seem to defy history. They are not changing the future. They are rewriting the past from the position of the sovereign now. To master the fluidity of the manifested now, the observer must overcome the persistence of vision in the world. The observer must overcome the tendency to keep seeing the old reality even after the internal frequency has changed. The matrix relies on this lag time to discourage the observer, making them believe that their intent has failed because the physical world has not immediately rearranged itself. However, the 1% anomaly involves the understanding of the densest projection. The 1% understand the physical world is the last thing to change. By maintaining the new frequency with unshakable conviction, you effectively force the simulation to update its rendering to match your internal blueprint. This requires a form of temporal patience that is entirely different from waiting. It is a state of active, certain knowing of the manifestation. When you stop checking the clock and stop looking for results, you remove the resistance. That holds the old timeline in place, allowing the new reality to snap into position with a speed that appears miraculous to the sleeping masses. The fifth gateway also introduces the concept of quantum superpositioning of the self, where the observer recognizes multiple timelines today. The observer recognizes that they are currently existing in multiple timelines simultaneously, each with a different level of success, health, and awareness. The majority of the population is unconsciously tethered to the most probable low-frequency timeline by their habits, fears, and social conditioning. The 1% anomaly is the act of consciously shifting your anchor. You shift the anchor of your identity to the most optimal timeline available in the stack. This is achieved through the process of frequency matching, where you begin to think, feel, and act as the version of yourself that already inhabits that desired reality. You are not trying to get there. You are realizing that you are already there in the deep light of the sovereign self. You are simply withdrawing your attention from the less desirable versions of the self. As your attention on the old timeline fades, its physical manifestation begins to lose its density, eventually becoming a ghost timeline that no longer has any impact on your experience. You are moving through the multiverse, not by traveling through space, but by shifting your resonance. You move across the vertical stack of time. Furthermore, the mastery of the temporal distortion allows the observer to utilize time dilation for the purpose of accelerated learning and manifestation. Within the vacuum of sovereignty, the perception of time is entirely subjective, and the master can learn to expand a single moment into an eternity of creative focus in the void. This is the secret behind those who seem to accomplish an impossible amount of work or achieve profound levels of mastery in a fraction of the time required by others. They are not moving faster. They are operating in a state of consciousness where the entropic drag of the matrix has been neutralized. By detaching from the collective clock, you reclaim your authority now. By detaching from schedules and deadlines, you reclaim the authority over your own temporal experience. Your life becomes a series of high-intensity, high-frequency events that are no longer bound by the slow, grinding pace of the artificial script. You are living at the speed of thought, which is the speed of the source itself. As you dwell in the gateway, things begin to break. As you dwell in the fifth gateway, the world around you may begin to exhibit temporal fluidity, where the linear progression of events seems to break down. You may experience intense déjà vu, or find that the sequence of your day changes in response to your internal state in ways that are impossible to explain through traditional logic. This is the sign of the temporal break. This is a sign that you are successfully breaking the temporal tether of the matrix. You are no longer a passenger on the train of time. You are the one laying the tracks in real time. The 1% anomaly is the realization that time is not a prison, but a canvas, and that every moment is a fresh opportunity to paint a new reality. The past has no power over you at all. The past has no power unless you grant it through your attention, and the future has no shape until you define it through your intent. You are the eternal observer, existing in the timeless radiance of the source, playing a game of form in a world where every now is a gateway to infinity. The final insight of this fifth chapter is that the master of time is the master. The master of time is the master of reality. By collapsing the distance between the thought and the thing, you eliminate the gap where doubt and interference reside. The forbidden metaphysics have provided the key to the temporal vault, but you must be the one to step inside and claim the wealth of the eternal now. The script of time is written in pencil for the architect. The 1% frequency is the vibration of the timeless, the sound of the void, and the light of the absolute. It is time to stop waiting for your life to begin and to realize that it has already reached its perfection in the heart of the sovereign now. The clocks are stopping, the veils are lifting, and the eternal architect is finally free to create in the light of the now. Chapter 6. The crystalline resonance and the architecture of the sovereign field. A transition into the sixth gateway of the 1% anomaly marks a fundamental shift from the manipulation of external form to the total mastery of the internal substrate, a process known in forbidden metaphysics as the activation of the crystalline resonance. Up to this point, the initiate has learned to deconstruct the script and navigate the temporal streams in the world. The sixth gate requires the permanent stabilization of the bio-digital interface into a state of unwavering, high-frequency radiation. To the sleeper, the body is a soft, biological entity at the mercy of environmental factors. But the sovereign observer recognizes that the physical form is a holographic projection of an underlying geometric lattice that can be hardened into a crystalline state today. This is not a literal transformation into mineral, but a metaphorical and energetic hardening of the consciousness, where the individual no longer absorbs the dissonant frequencies of the matrix, but instead acts as a powerful, localized transmitter that forces the surrounding environment to harmonize with its own core. The resonance is the ultimate defense and the ultimate tool of creation now. It creates a field of influence so potent that the artificial script cannot penetrate its boundaries, allowing the observer to exist as a walking sanctuary of absolute truth in a world of manufactured lies. The mechanics of the sovereign field rely on the total integration of the heart's electromagnetic output with the coherent light of the higher mind, creating a toroid of energy in the void. The toroid is impenetrable to the low-frequency interference of the collective ego. The matrix operates by finding hooks in your energetic field, unresolved traumas, unconscious fears, and social dependencies, and using these hooks to pull your resonance back into the standard operating frequency of the simulation. The 1% anomaly is the process of smoothing out these hooks in the now. The anomaly involves the fire of self-observation, until the energetic body is so smooth and so resonant that the matrix has nothing to latch onto. In this state, you become invisible to the predatory algorithms of the system. You are still physically present, but because you are no longer vibrating in the same spectrum as the drama of the world, the drama passes through you without a trace. The observer begins to experience a profound sense of radiant solitude, a state where they are connected to all things through the source, yet entirely independent of all things in their personal sovereignty. This crystalline state is maintained through the constant cultivation of internal coherence, which is the absence of contradiction between your thought, your word, and your action. Every time you speak a truth that you do not believe, or act in a way that betrays your sovereign vision, you create a fracture in your crystalline lattice, allowing the dissonant noise of the matrix to leak in. The forbidden metaphysics emphasize that the 1% are masters of their own word, treating their speech as a literal act of creation that must be guarded with absolute integrity. When your internal world is perfectly coherent, your sovereign field becomes a frequency wall that filters out any information or event that does not align with your highest blueprint. You do not have to fight against the chaos of the world. You simply remain so stable in your own resonance that the chaos cannot find a coordinate within your reality. This is the true meaning of the Logos. This means being in the world, but not of it as you are, operating from a different dimensional baseline than the one occupied by the masses. Furthermore, the sixth gateway reveals the secret of field entrainment, the ability of a high-frequency crystalline field to naturally reorganize lower-frequency fields in its vicinity. This is why the presence of a being can transform an entire room. The 1% do not help others in the traditional sense of the script, which is often just a subtle form of codependency. Instead, they serve as a frequency anchor, providing a living example of what is possible when the anomaly is fully activated. By simply existing in your absolute truth, you create a pressure of light that forces the shadows around you to dissolve in the void. You are a catalyst for the collapse of the artificial script in others, simply by refusing to acknowledge its validity in yourself. The crystalline resonance also allows for the direct perception of data without the interference of the biodigital filters that the matrix has installed. As your field becomes more stable, you no longer rely on the 5 senses to tell you what is true. Instead, you know the signature of an event or a person through direct frequency recognition. This is the end of deception, for the mask of the script cannot hide the vibrational reality of the intent behind it. The 1% move through the world with a level of clarity that is often mistaken for psychic ability, but it is actually just the function of a clean, crystalline interface. You can see the geometric structures behind the news, the hidden agendas behind the social movements, and the true needs of the people you interact with, allowing you to act with a precision that is impossible for those who are still blinded by the sensory veil. You are no longer guessing. You are navigating by the light of the Logos. As you stabilize, the world treats you with respect. The simulation is programmed to respond to the most coherent field in any given area. Resources flow to you, not because you are chasing them, but because your field has created a vacuum of high-frequency potential that must be filled by the laws of resonance. Opportunities appear that are perfectly tuned to your sovereign vision, and the friction is replaced by a smooth, effortless glide. This is the reward for the work of deconstructing the collective ego and anchoring the vacuum of sovereignty. You have built a temple of light within your own being, and the universe is now honoring that temple by providing everything required for its continued expansion. The final insight is that the strength of your field is determined by the depth of your surrender to the divine source. It is not your power that creates the resonance, but the power of the absolute flowing through a vessel that has finally stopped resisting. The 1% anomaly is the result of the human ego stepping aside so that the architect can take the lead. The forbidden metaphysics have led you to the point where you are no longer a person trying to be powerful, but power itself in the now. The lattice is set, the resonance is humming, and the sovereign field is fully operational. The world is no longer a place of struggle, but a canvas for your radiant influence, and the matrix is nothing more than the medium through which your light is refracted into infinite beauty. You are the crystal, the light, and the eye that sees it all. The sovereignty is yours for all of time. Chapter 7. The Fractal Cascades and the Orchestration of Parallel Probabilities. The seventh gateway of the 1% anomaly introduces the observer to the staggering realization of fractal causality, a level of forbidden metaphysics where the individual no longer manages a single timeline, but begins to orchestrate the resonance of their entire multidimensional presence in the world. To the sleeper, life is a linear chain of cause and effect occurring within a vacuum. But the sovereign architect understands that every action, thought, and intent sends a ripple through a fractal structure that mirrors itself at every scale of reality, from the subatomic to the galactic. The matrix survives by keeping your focus narrow, forcing you to believe that you are localized today. The truth is that you are a nodal point in an infinite web of interconnected data. When you activate the seventh gateway, you stop trying to fix the symptoms of your life and start adjusting the fractal seed, the core vibrational formula that determines the pattern of your entire existence across all parallel expressions. This chapter is the initiation into the mastery of the void now. A single shift in the primordial intent of the observer triggers a massive, instantaneous reorganization of every probability field within their sphere of influence, effectively collapsing the distance between the source and its infinite reflections. The mechanics of the fractal cascade rely on the principle of self-similarity, the metaphysical law of the patterns of expansion. Patterns of expansion will repeat themselves in every area of your life until the core seed is altered. If your core resonance is defined by a frequency of lack, that lack will manifest not only in your finances, but in your relationships, your health, and your very perception of time. The 1% anomaly is the surgical intervention into this core seed in the matrix code, replacing the program of the artificial script with the geometry of absolute sovereignty. Once this seed is reprogrammed, the observer does not need to laboriously change every detail of their physical world. Instead, they witness a fractal unfolding, where every branch of their reality begins to bloom with a new frequency simultaneously. This is the master's secret today. The transformations appear total and effortless. They are not pulling on the leaves of the tree to make them grow, but rather changing the chemistry of the root so that the entire tree must, by law, produce a different fruit. You are learning to operate at the level of the original command, the point where the logos first bifurcates into the multiplicity of the dream now. To master the orchestration of parallel probabilities, the observer must develop the capacity for simultaneous awareness, the ability to hold the frequency of their desired outcome, even while the old, dying fractal patterns are still visible in the sensory field. The matrix utilizes the feedback delay to trick the observer into believing that the old pattern is dominant. The 1% understand that the physical world is merely a delayed echo of a previous fractal state. By remaining anchored in the new seed resonance, you create a phase shift in the holographic substrate, where the old reality begins to lose its informational coherence, and the new reality gains luminous density. This is the stage where the observer may experience bleed. Elements from a more optimal parallel reality start to manifest in their current experience unexpected opportunities, sudden changes in the behavior of others, and the arrival of resources that seem to appear out of thin air. These are not accidents. They are the mechanical results of your fractal alignment, the signs that you are successfully pulling the ideal version now. The seventh gateway also reveals the secret of recursive manifestation, where the observer realizes that by empowering others to recognize their own sovereignty, they are actually strengthening the fractal resonance of their own field. Because the universe is a fractal reflection of the self, Every act of sovereign recognition ripples outwards and then returns to the source. The 1% do not hoard power in the way the artificial script suggests, for they know that true power is infinite, and that the more they anchor the frequency of freedom in the collective field, the more effortless their own freedom becomes. This is a radical departure from the competitive win-lose dynamics of the matrix, moving instead into a unified field in the void. The sovereign individual acts as a harmonic conductor for the entire simulation. Your success becomes an inevitability because it is no longer a personal pursuit, but a mathematical requirement of the new fractal pattern you have established. You are weaving a tapestry of light where every thread is a parallel possibility being harmonized into a singular masterpiece today. Furthermore, the mastery of fractal cascades allows for the collapsing of the karmic loop, the process of neutralizing the repetitive cycles of the artificial script that have kept the consciousness trapped for eons. Karma, in the context of Forbidden's metaphysics, is not a system of moral punishment, but a fractal inertia, the tendency of a low-frequency pattern to repeat. By entering the 7th gateway and identifying the recurring geometries of your challenges, you can apply a neutralizing frequency at the exact point of the fractal origin, effectively deleting the loop from your entire multidimensional history. You are not clearing the past. You are realizing that the past is a data set that you have the administrative authority to edit. This results in a profound sense of ontological lightness, as the heavy baggage of the collective human story falls away, leaving you as a clean, radiant slate upon which the beyond matter can write its most glorious expressions. As you stabilize within the 7th gateway, you will perceive the breath of the multiverse, the rhythmic expansion and contraction of the now. The holographic field responds to your sovereign presence. You will find that you no longer need to manifest in the traditional sense, for the world has become a transparent medium that conforms to your intent with the fluidity of water. The 1% anomaly has reached its phase of exponential expansion, where every small act produces a large effect in the world. You are operating from the high ground of the fractal architecture, viewing the unfolding of reality from a perspective that encompasses the beginning and the end of every story. The simulation is no longer a mystery to be solved or a prison to be escaped. It is a musical instrument that you have finally learned to play with the skill of a master in the light today. The final insight of this 7th chapter is that you are the master fractal, the central coordinate from which all other patterns emerge. Your internal state is the blueprint for the entire cosmos as you experience it, and the sovereignty you claim for yourself is the sovereignty you bestow upon all of creation. The Forbidden's metaphysics lead to the truth of the One. There is no other and no outside, only the infinite, variations of your own singular light playing against the backdrop of the void. The cascades are flowing, the probabilities are aligning, and the orchestration of your new earth is in full effect. You are the conductor, the music, and the silence. The 1% frequency is now a roaring tide of your authority. Chapter 8. The Void Transcendence and the Mastery of the Unmanifested Substrate. The 8th gateway into the 1% anomaly represents the most radical departure from the human experience, requiring the observer to transcend the very concept of being to inhabit the absolute vacuum of the unmanifested substrate. In the previous gateways, you have learned to manipulate the pixels in the void. You have learned to manipulate the holographic pixels, to orchestrate the fractal cascades, and to harden your crystalline resonance. But the 8th gate demands that you step behind the screen of the simulation entirely to face the raw, undifferentiated power of the void. To the sleeper, the void is a terrifying expanse of nothingness, a black hole that threatens to extinguish the ego. In the realm of Forbidden's metaphysics, the void is recognized as the womb of the Logos, the infinite field of pure data from which every universe is born, and into which every simulation eventually dissolves. The 1% who reach this level of initiation understand that true sovereignty is not found in the mastery of the scene, but in the total identification with the unseen now. When you inhabit the void, you are no longer a person who has power. You have become the potentiality that allows power to exist in the first place. This chapter is the deconstruction of the final idol, the idol of the self-revealing that the I is. Merely a localized contraction of the infinite vacuum, a temporary mask worn by the Absolute to experience the thrill of the play. The mechanics of void transcendence rely on the practice of radical stillness, a state of consciousness where the observer successfully halts every movement of the mind, every vibration of the heart, and every impulse of the biodigital interface. The matrix is a machine built on motion, a relentless sequence of events designed to keep your attention pinned to the surface today. The void is the stillness that lies beneath the waves. When you achieve absolute internal silence, you create a vacuum anchor within the simulation, a point where the laws of the matrix simply cease to function because there is no movement for the algorithms to latch on to. This is the stage of the great erasure, where the observer realizes that they can delete any aspect now. The observer realizes they can delete any aspect of their reality by simply withdrawing the light of their attention and returning it to the void. Anything that is not actively observed from the source eventually loses its coherence and fades back into the unmanifested substrate. The 1% use this power to clear their path of obstacles, not by fighting them, but by uncreating. The 1% return the problematic data to the 0 point from which it emerged. To master the unmanifested substrate, the observer must learn to operate in the state of pre-thought, a dimension of awareness that exists before the logos bifurcates into the word and the image. In this state, your intent is not a sentence or a visualization, but a raw, non-dual pulse today. Your intent is a pulse of will that ripples through the vacuum. This is the highest form of creation, for a command issued from the void is not subject to the delays of the temporal stream or the resistance of the collective ego. It is an instantaneous manifestation, with a gap between the intent and the physical. Rendering is reduced to 0 in the holographic matrix. The forbidden metaphysics describe this as the hand of the architect, the ability to reach into the dark matter of the void and pull forth a fully formed reality with the same ease as a magician pulling a bird from the air. You are no longer working with the existing materials of the simulation. You are bringing forth entirely new substances, new laws, and new geometries. You are bringing forth geometries that have no precedent in the artificial script. You have become a source point, a localized eruption of the infinite into the finite, and the world must reorganize itself to accommodate your arrival. The 8th gateway also reveals the secret of ontological invisibility, the ability of the sovereign observer to remain undetected in the world. You remain undetected by the predatory structures of the matrix while standing in plain sight, because the predatory algorithms are programmed to recognize and react to specific signatures of identity, your name, your history, your social status, and your emotional triggers. The act of identifying with the void makes you effectively unreadable. The machine sees only the vacuum. Because the machine cannot quantify or control the void, it simply ignores you. This is the ultimate freedom, for it allows the 1% to move through the deepest layers of the simulation without being touched by its laws or its consequences. You are a phantom in the code, a presence that has all the benefits of the physical world without any of the liabilities today. Your life becomes a series of impossible transits, where you find yourself in the right place at the right time, with all doors opening before you, simply because the simulation no longer perceives you as an obstacle to its own programmed entropy. Furthermore, the mastery of the void allows for the reclamation of the shadow, the process of integrating the darkest parts now. The matrix thrives on the division between good, and evil, light and dark, using this duality to keep the observer in a state of internal conflict. But the void knows no such distinctions. In the unmanifested substrate, Every shadow is simply a density of light that has forgotten its origin. By bringing the void into the darkest corners, you neutralize the polarity. You are not defeating the darkness. You are transmuting it, returning it to the state of pure potentiality where it can be repurposed for the expansion of the sovereign vision. This is the true meaning of alchemy, the conversion of the lead of the dualistic script into the gold of the non-dual absolute. You are becoming a wholeness operator in the center of the chaos. As you stabilize within the eighth gateway, you will experience the collapse of the mirror, where the distinction between the self and the world finally vanishes. You realize that the void in the center of your being is the same void that exists between the stars, and that the entire holographic universe is a single, continuous movement of your own awareness in the now. You are the screen, the light, the actors, and the audience all at once. This realization brings an end to the desire for results, for you already possess everything in the state of potentiality. Paradoxically, it is this very state of desirous non-attachment that makes you the most powerful manifester in the simulation. Because you no longer need things, they appear now. The world is free to become anything you imagine. You have reached the 0 point of sovereignty, the absolute zenith of the 1% anomaly, where the master and the void are one. The final insight of this 8th chapter is that the void is not the end of your journey, but the true beginning. You have died to the world of the script to be reborn as the master. The Forbidden's metaphysics have led you to the throne of the unmanifested, and you have discovered that the throne is your own heart. The silence is no longer an absence. It is a presence, a roaring power that sustains the entire multiverse. You are the architect of the nothingness, the weaver of the dark, and the one who says, "Let there be light in the forgotten sun." The void is yours, the substrate is yours, and the sovereignty of the unseen is your eternal crown. The 1% frequency is now the only sound in the cosmos, and you are the silence that hears it. The simulation is still, the void is full, and the sovereign is finally and irrevocably home. You are the source, the end, and the infinite space between. All is yours. Chapter 9. The Fractal Sovereignty and the Rebirth of the Logos. The 9th gateway of the 1% anomaly represents the ultimate synthesis of the architect's journey, where the individual no longer merely observes the vacuum or manipulates the probability fields, but undergoes a total rebirth as the living logos within the holographic simulation. To the seeker who has traversed the previous 8 chambers of metaphysics, the concept of the self is gone. The concept of the self has been systematically dismantled, leaving only the radiant void of the primordial witness. Yet in the 9th gate, this void begins to speak. This is not the speech of the human ego, or the recycled noise of the collective script, but the eruption of the original command of frequency, of such absolute authority that it reorganizes the data of the multiverse today. The utterance of the original command reorganizes the data. The fractal sovereignty is the realization that your consciousness is not a byproduct of the matrix, but the very substrate upon which the matrix is written. And as the logos, you regain the ability to speak your own reality into being without the interference of the artificial filters. This is the initiation into the causal voice. In this chapter, we enter the level of mastery where every thought is a blueprint and every word is a physical event, marking the end of the era of the victim and the beginning of the era of the sovereign creator. The mechanics of this rebirth rely on the stabilization of the vertical alignment, a state where the individual has cleared every blockage within the bio-digital interface. The vertical alignment allows the infinite light of the beyond matter to flow into the physical world without distortion. In the lower rungs of the matrix, the human voice is horizontal, seeking to influence, persuade, or defend against other nodes in the network. But the voice of the logos is vertical, descending from the unmanifested substrate to dictate the terms of manifestation. When you operate as the fractal sovereignty, You understand that you are a localized version of the entire cosmos, a fractal holographic unit that contains the whole within the part. This means that any adjustment you make to your own internal resonance is simultaneously an adjustment to the entire simulation, as there is no outside that is not a reflection of your own coordinate. The 1% anomaly reaches its full maturity here, as the observer stops trying to change the world and instead focuses on the purity of the internal broadcast, knowing that the world has no choice but to mirror the perfection of the source. The rebirth of the Logos requires the sacrifice of the personal story, the final release of any lingering attachment to the drama. Release the attachment to the drama of the human identity. You must be willing to exist as a clean slate, a hollow reed through which the primordial intent can whistle its new song. The Matrix survives by feeding you a legacy narrative, a history of limitations, failures, and societal roles that defines the boundaries of what you are allowed to create in this current reality. By stepping into the ninth gateway, you effectively delete this narrative, replacing it with the sovereign script, a self-authored account of your divinity that is updated in every now moment. This is the stage of infinite fluidity, where you can assume any role, inhabit any timeline, and manifest any resource because you are no longer defined by the parameters of the past. You are the author who has realized they are the ink, the paper, and the hand that writes, and as such, the story of your life becomes a masterpiece of deliberate, high-frequency design. The fractal sovereignty also introduces the observer to the law of immediate convergence, where the distance between the internal vision and the external rendering is completely collapsed. In the previous stages of initiation, there was still a sense of process, a need to hold the frequency, to wait for the probability field to shift, and to navigate the temporal delays. But for the Logos, the process is a relic of the old world. When you speak from the ninth gate, the simulation responds with the speed of light, as you are no longer negotiating with the Matrix. You command from the administrative root. This level of power requires a terrifying degree of frequency responsibility, for in the state of the Logos, there is no such thing as an idle thought. Every ripple you send into the field is amplified by the fractal nature of the reality, meaning that your internal state must be one of absolute coherence and unwavering divine love. This is not the sentimental love of the human script, but the cohesive force of the universe, the gravitational pull of the source that holds all things in a state of divine order. Furthermore, the ninth gateway reveals the secret of multi-dimensional anchoring, where the sovereign individual can simultaneously inhabit multiple layers of the spectrum while staying centered. You are able to walk the streets of the three-dimensional city, engaging in the necessary tasks of the physical world, while your awareness remains fixed in the radiant silence of the 10th dimension. This dual presence allows you to act as a bridge of light, pulling the frequencies of the higher worlds down into the dense layers of the simulation to trigger an awakening. The 1% who embody the Logos do not hide in caves. They exist at the heart of the Matrix, operating as luminous disruptors who shatter the density of the artificial script simply by existing within its proximity. You are a walking glitch, a sovereign anomaly that proves the rules are a lie, and your presence is an invitation for others to reclaim their lost divinity. As you stabilize within the ninth gateway, you will experience the echo of the Absolute, a state where every sound in the world is heard as a vibration of your own name, and every sight is seen as a reflection of your own glory. The sense of separation that has haunted the human condition for eons is replaced by a profound, non-dual radiance, where you recognize yourself. You recognize yourself in the predator and the prey, the saint and the sinner, the star and the stone. This is the birth of fractal compassion, the understanding that because everything is you, everything deserves the same sovereign respect and the same infinite love that you have reclaimed for yourself. You are no longer fighting the shadows. You are illuminating them now. Illuminating them with the light of the Logos, brings the entire simulation back into alignment with the original intent of the source. The final insight of this 9th chapter is that the Logos is not a person, but a function of the awakened consciousness. You have not become the Logos. You have simply stopped pretending to be anything else in the holographic world. The forbidden metaphysics have led you to the point where the mask of the human has become transparent, revealing the face of the architect beneath. The 1% frequency is now the baseline of your existence, a constant hum of power that sustains your every breath and every manifestation. The rebirth is complete, and the sovereignty is absolute for the Creator. The command of the Logos is the only law that remains. You are the Word made flesh, the void made light, and the silence made song. The 9th gate is open, the path is clear, and the 10th gate, the final integration, is waiting for your arrival. The world is your canvas, the stars are your witnesses, and the infinite expansion of your heart is the heartbeat of the new creation. Chapter 10. The absolute integration of the 1% and the infinite expansion of the sovereign mirror. The 10th gateway represents the final dissolution of the concept of attainment and the ultimate realization of the 1% anomaly, marking the moment where the observer ceases to be a participant in the simulation and becomes the living presence of the absolute integration. To enter this final chamber of forbidden metaphysics, you must shed the last remaining skin of the seeker. You realize that there is no distance between your current breath and the birth of the first star, for the architect has never left the throne of the unmanifested substrate. The absolute integration is the state where the metaphysical architecture you have meticulously built through the previous 9 gateways collapses into a single unmanifested point of origin that contains the expansion. You are no longer navigating the luminary pathway. You are the ground upon which the pathway exists, the light that illuminates the path, and the darkness that defines its boundaries. In this stage, the sovereignty you have reclaimed is not a power over the world, but the realization that the world is an organic extension of your own sensory field, a holographic nervous system for you. The holographic nervous system responds with total fidelity to the subtlest shifts in your primordial awareness. The artificial script of humanity is now seen from the vantage point of the eternal, where every tragedy and every triumph is recognized as a necessary vibration in a grand symphony of beyond matter, a masterpiece of shadow and light that you have authored from silence. At the threshold of this final gate, the mind must surrender its last weapon, the habit of categorization and the belief in the 1% as a separate elite. For at the peak of integration, you realize that the 1% is not a demographic, but the irreducible essence of the all. You no longer see the world in terms of spirit and matter, light and dark, or creator and creation. The binary crutches of a mind still trapped in the lower rungs of the matrix are gone. The master of the 10th gate lives in the state of non-dual radiance, where every object, person, and event is perceived as the same singular substance vibrating at different densities. This is the stage of the great transparency, where the walls of the simulation become thin enough to perceive. You perceive the gears of the cosmic clockwork turning behind the veil of the physical senses. You move through the marketplace with the same reverence you would hold in a cathedral, for you recognize that the bricks of the street and the stars in the sky are made of the same divine light that pulses in your own heart. This realization brings an end to the search for meaning now. You have become the meaning itself, the living presence that validates the existence of the universe simply by observing it. The effort of manifestation disappears, replaced by a state of spontaneous occurrence, where the realities you once labored to design now appear with the effortlessness of a reflection in a mirror. The integration allows you to inhabit global resonance. The individual will is perfectly synchronized with the pulse of the absolute, and the 1% anomaly becomes the new baseline for the entire collective field. You are the conductor of a choir that spans across dimensions, ensuring that every note played in your personal reality contributes to the harmony of the whole. This is the ultimate expression of the protocol today. The personal becomes universal, and the universal becomes personal. From this vantage point, you see that your journey through the previous 9 gates was a process of remembering what you had never truly forgotten, that you are the architect of the void and the weaver of the light. You no longer need to issue commands or visualize blueprints, for your state of being is a command. The matrix obeys without hesitation. You have become a zero-point event, a localized eruption of the infinite into the finite, a portal through which the beyond matter breathes life into the holographic clay of the world. Your existence is the protocol in action, a silent transmission of sovereignty that ripples through the collective consciousness, awakening the dormant seeds. You awaken the seeds of divinity in everyone you encounter who is ready to hear the frequency of the 1%. As you stabilize within the 10th gateway, the concept of time as a sequence of events is permanently replaced by the eternal now, a multidimensional present where all moments are accessible and all outcomes are realized. You live in the conclusion of every story. You enjoy the journey of every beginning while knowing the end. This state of consciousness is the end of anxiety, the end of lack, and the end of the illusion of separation. You are the ocean experiencing itself through the unique perspective of a single wave, yet never losing the awareness of your own vastness. The physical body is now celebrated as a sacred instrument. The body is a focused point of light that allows the Absolute to taste the sweetness of the material experience. You have achieved the crystalline permanence, a state of being that remains untouched by the shifting tides of the manifest world, anchored in the unshakable peace of the source. The beyond matter is no longer a destination. It is the atmosphere in which you breathe. The 1% anomaly is revealed to be the true nature of the soul. The final realization of the 10th gate is that the forbidden's metaphysics were always a conversation between you and yourself, a way for the Absolute to hide from its own radiance so that it could experience the thrill of the discovery. The luminary pathway has led you back to the throne you never left. You return with the wisdom of the journey and the depth of the experience. The observer and the observed have vanished into the singular radiance of the absolute integration, and only the eternal pulse remains, beating with the rhythm of 1,000 universes. You are the architect, the void, the light, and the silence. You are the beyond matter made manifest in the world. You are the sovereign ruler of the infinite dream. As you close the book of the protocol, you realize that the story is just beginning. For in the heart of the Absolute, there are always new worlds to dream, new geometries to weave, and new depths of love to explore. The collapse is final, the awakening is complete, and the eternal expansion of your heart is the law today. The heartbeat of the new creation is your heart. This integration marks the end of the simulation's dominion over your perception, as the 1% frequency has now fully overwritten the legacy code of the artificial script. There is no longer a need for protection, for there is nothing outside of you to fear. There is no longer a need for accumulation in the matrix. You are the source of all abundance. Every step you take is a sacred movement in a world that has been transfigured by your presence. The shadows that once loomed large are now recognized as mere shades of your own light, and the obstacles that once blocked your path are now seen as stepping stones in the grand architecture of your own design. The world is yours to love. In that love, the true power of the sovereign architect is revealed. You are the living proof that the matrix is a choice, and that freedom is the only reality worth inhabiting. The 10th gate remains open forever, a permanent testament to the triumph of the primordial witness over the mechanics of the machine. You have crossed the threshold. You have spoken the word. You have crossed the threshold, and now you simply are. The 1% has been fulfilled, and the infinite journey of the light continues in every heart that dares to look beyond the veil. The integration is absolute, the frequency is stable, and the sovereign is finally home. All is one, one is all, and the dance of the dream continues in the eternal radiance of you. The conclusion, the sovereign awakening, and the final dissolution of the veil. The completion of the 10 gateways marks the end of your identity as a subject of the matrix, and your definitive rebirth as the architect of the unmanifested substrate. You have journeyed through the deconstruction of the sensory veil, the hijacking of the biodigital interface, and the mastery of the fractal cascades in the void. You have arrived at the only truth that has ever existed, that you are the singular source of the holographic display. The 1% anomaly is no longer a goal to be reached or a secret to be guarded, but the natural, radiating state of your integrated presence. By withdrawing your attention from the artificial script and stabilizing your frequency in the absolute, you have won. You have effectively collapsed the walls of the simulation, revealing a reality that is as fluid as thought and as infinite as the void. The struggle for manifestation has been replaced by the law of spontaneous occurrence. For, when the observer and the observed are one, every intent is an immediate physical reality. As you step forward from this transmission, you do so as an anchor. You act as a frequency anchor in a world still dreaming of limitation. Your sovereignty is your contribution to the whole, a silent invitation for the collective consciousness to wake up from its slumber and reclaim its own divine authority. You no longer need to seek for answers, for you have become the living answer to every question the universe could pose in the holographic script. The beyond matter is your playground, the silence is your sanctuary, and the eternal expansion of your sovereign heart is the only law that remains. The protocol is fulfilled, the architect is home, and the light of the 1% now shines with the brilliance of 1,000 suns, forever illuminating the path back to the source. You are whole, you are free, and you are the master. You are the master of the infinite now. The veil has dissolved, the journey is complete, and the radiance of your own absolute presence is the only reality that remains. Step into the void of your own creation and watch as the stars align to match the frequency of your sovereign command. All is yours, for you are the one that became the all. The awakening is final and eternal.